podcast is sponsored by Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. It gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere, even on platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, you can download the Anchor app, that's ANCHOR, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey y'all, my name is Christian, I'm a millennial, and this is the Millennial Mind. Millennials get a bad rap for being lazy, non-productive members of society. We also get told that our opinions are warped and don't matter. This podcast is designed to express a point of view on the world as a whole, but from a millennial's perspective. I will talk about love, current events, pretty much everything that comes to mind. Come join me on this journey on speaking my mind, and I would love for you to speak your mind as well. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Millennial Mind. Thank you again for joining me on another week's journey of speaking my mind, and I hope that all of you are speaking your mind as well. So I am excited about this topic. I feel like I say that every week, but I am completely and utterly excited because if you all have listened to previous episodes, I hope you have. If you haven't, there's a whole list of episodes you can listen to, so make sure you catch up. But in previous episodes, I've mentioned my lovely husband, and I've never really gone in depth as far as our relationship is concerned, how we met, what our relationship is like. So I'm going to get into that on this episode. As you all may know, I am a millennial, thus the Millennial Mind. But my husband is actually a Generation Xer. Right now, I am 29 years old. My husband is 47. Don't gasp. Don't be like, what? I know a lot of you guys are like, what? Yes, it's an 18-year difference. My husband is 18 years older than me. He is a Generation Xer. So let me actually start from the beginning of our relationship and then kind of go a little bit more in depth, and then you can see where I'm going with this. So with my dating life, I've always come into contact with older men. Older men have always been attracted to me. I don't know what it is. I don't know what vibe I'm giving off. Maybe they think I'm mature for my age. I don't know. But there's always been older men that's like, you, young tender, that's who I want. I dated someone who was 10 years older than me. I think I dated or I was involved with somebody who was around my age just once, but the majority of the time it's been someone who was 10 years or older than me. Fast forward to about, or I shouldn't say fast forward, but let's go back in time to 2008. That's when I went on my prom, and my mom had this huge pre-prom party for me that I really didn't get to participate in, but that's neither here nor there. She had this pre-prom party for me, and she had this guy to come take my pictures. Who was this guy? My future husband. I just didn't know it at the time. So I remember getting ready for my prom, and I saw this guy sitting in his car outside my house. I'm like, what is wrong with him? Like, why is he sitting in his car? He's such a weirdo. He should like come in and, take my picture so that we can be done before all these people come in. But he was kind of sitting in his car, just kind of, looking around. I'm like, okay, he's weird. Let me just continue getting ready to go to prom. Now, granted, I was 17, so I was completely into myself anyway. So, my date, he came. My future husband took my prom pictures, and then we went our separate ways. Now, granted, during that time that he took my pictures, he had just went through a separation. He was previously married. So he went through a separation, so that's probably why he was looking kind of down. Because I remember he looked down and he just looked depressed, like somebody had hit him with a baseball bat, like right in the head. I'm like, why is he looking so depressed? But that was probably part of the reason why he was looking like that. So after he took my prom pictures, I forgot about him. Fast forward to 2013, so about 5 years later. As you all know about me, I am a pastor's kid. But I did not know that my future husband was a pastor's kid as well. My mom and his sister used to work together at the health department. His sister was talking about her church, in which her father was a pastor. So her father, my father-in-law, was a pastor, and how he was thinking about retiring. And of course, she knew that my mom was the first lady and that my dad was a pastor. So his sister had the grand idea, like, hey, why don't your husband take over for the church? So my mom was like, okay, let me discuss it with my husband, which they discussed, and they was like, okay, let's see what this church is about. So I want to say around April 2013, we went to the church, and I saw my future husband again. And so I recognized him because my husband, he has a signature hairstyle. It's a fro. He has a fro. So if I didn't remember anything about him from when he took my prom pictures, I remember he had a fro. So when I saw him 5 years later, he still had the fro. I'm like, okay, I remember the fro. So I remember this guy. So I saw him again at the church, and he was asking me if I remembered him, and I was like, yeah, I remember you took my pictures, yada yada. And we were just talking, and, that was it. My dad did decide to take over for my father-in-law. So we were at the church a little bit more often. And because we were at the church, that gave me and my husband, which my husband's name is Landon, that gave us more time to talk. And the more we talked, the more I was liking the conversation. I liked how mature he was, how established he seemed to be. He, and I say this to him all the time, he's a walking Wikipedia, because he knows everything about everything. And sometimes I ask him, how do you know this stuff? like the average person wouldn't know this, but you somehow know like the exact figure of pi. Like, who knows that? Who knows that? You do, though. That's crazy. But for some reason, I liked it, and he was funny. He made me laugh, even though for me it doesn't take too much. But he had a nice sense of humor, and he seemed to be more open. So we started to date, without going too much into how we started to date. I'm just jump right into it. We started to date, and we dated for almost 4 years. He proposed to me in 2016, and then we got married in 2017. Now, when I found out that he was 18 years older than me, because the age thing came out pretty early in our relationship. So I thought about it. I was like, okay, that's different. That's a lot older than what I usually come in contact with. But for some reason, it didn't really bother me as much. I would speak to my friends about it, and one friend was like, if you move forward with this relationship, I'm going to punch you in the face because this is absolutely disgusting. My dad was definitely not for it. I don't think he would have been for anyone I was dating, but he was really not for somebody who was 18 years older than me. He was saying, this old man, going after my daughter, me. Like, my dad was having a tough time. But it didn't really bother me. And maybe this is a family thing, because on my mom's side of the family, they're known for marrying men who are substantially older. Like, my grandma and my grandfather on my mom's side were 10 years apart. I have an aunt and an uncle that were about 20-some years apart. My great-grandmother and my great-grandfather were about 20 years apart. It was just a constant theme on my mother's side. So my mom, she was like, oh, this is just a family thing. This is what we do. My dad was like, nope, this is not what we do. This is not cool. This is not hot. Like, he sat me down. It was like, Christian, this is not the route to go. I don't know what you're thinking, but this ain't it. This is not it. So I endured all of that, but still decided, like, hey, I'm going to give this relationship a shot and see what happens. And I did not regret it. And that's why I'm married today. I've been married for 2 years, almost 3 years. 3 years in 3 months, actually. So that's a little background into how me and my husband met, and how we, how the status of our relationship today. Now, with the age difference comes a difference in a lot of things. A difference in thinking, a difference in music taste, a difference in movie taste, etc. So there was a difference, me being a millennial and him being a Generation Xer. So there were pros and cons. There's pros to being married to a Generation Xer, and then there's cons to being married to a Generation Xer. And this is just my own personal list. This is not an exhaustive list. I don't know if there's anyone out there who's a millennial who's married to a Generation Xer. I would love to hear your thoughts on this list. But I'm just going to go through my own list, and we'll just go from there. So I'll go through the pros first. The pro of being married to an older man, or someone in a different generation, a generation behind you, I should say. One, they're already established. Now, when me and my husband were dating. I was in law school trying to get that degree, honey. Trying to get it. So I was in law school trying to finish up my education so I wouldn't have to go back to school ever again. In the meantime, my husband had already finished school. He had his master's. He already had a house, already had a stable job. So he was just ready to go. Whereas me, I was just trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do about these student loans? I don't even have a job. I got to look for a job. Oh, I got to worry about, paying all the fees so that I can graduate. Where am I going to live after I graduate? I don't know. Just things, just in the process of establishing myself or trying to establish myself, whereas my husband was already established. So when I got married to him, we already had a house ready to go. It was just ready to go, everything. So which was nice. It was nice that he already had things ready to go. And I think if I was married to someone my age, we would have been trying to figure it out together, which I would have been cool with. But because I fell in love with somebody who was substantially older, they already had that ready to go. Another pro of being married to an older man, better lover. So, this is a big one. And I think because my husband already had experience sexually, and that's one thing I understood, that he had more experience sexually than I did. But to me, that was an advantage for me because I've been with men, I'll say boys because they were really boys my age, and they were just like hit it and quit. Like no foreplay, if so, very minimal. They were just like, let me get this out, and you gonna let me get this out, and then we're gonna be done. And then 5 minutes later, we're gonna do this again. You're gonna let me get this out, and then that's gonna be it. And then we're gonna do this over and over and over again. I was like, man, when do I ever get satisfied at all? Now, my husband, he's already been through that stage, and now he's at the point where he's more experienced as far as what women like, what foreplay is, what foreplay does for a woman. Because women, we're like an oven. We need to be preheated. We need to be, we need to work our way up to, being hot and heavy. Sometimes we may be there already, but most times we need to be worked up to that. So when I married my husband, and he already had that notion in his mind, and his actions displayed that understanding, I was like, wow, this is a lot better than what I have experienced in the past. And it makes intimacy and my sexual experiences with him more satisfying, because I know that he's not just concerned about him getting off. He's concerned about me too. Like, and sometimes it feels like he's more concerned about me being satisfied than himself. He just wants to make sure that I'm enjoying myself as much as he is. So that was a key thing for me in realizing the difference between being with someone my age and then being with someone substantially older. Another pro of being with an older man is that they're more patient. My husband is extremely patient, super patient. And because he's gone through ups and downs, hills and valleys, ebbs and flows of life, he's learned a lot. he's learned a lot, and that learning curve has caused him to be more patient. Whereas me, I'm like, okay, I need to have this now. Burger King, have it my way. That's what I want. I want it my way because this is my life. Whereas my husband's like, oh, let's just see how this goes, or I don't have to have it right now. I'll just save up for it, and even if it takes me 6 months for me to save up for it, I'll get it when I get it. Sometimes that could be annoying for me because I'm like, we need to have this now. He's like, no, we really don't need this now. But it makes me a little bit more stable. It stabilizes me. Another pro is going off of the whole patience thing. Older men, of course, have a lot of wisdom. My husband, when I was going through law school, struggling with that, going through getting my first real job, he gave me a lot of tips and nuggets that I still carry with me today. And that comes from life, from him being older, from him experiencing life, from him hitting his head, a few times. He's just learned so much. And I'm trying to think of something that he's told me that I've taken with me. I know for one, when I started my first job, coming out, well, really my first real job coming out of law school, I was struggling. I was struggling because I didn't know what I was doing. People expected me to know what I was doing. Clients expected me to know what I was doing. Judges expected me to know what I was doing. I'm like, I really don't know what I'm doing. Law school did not prepare me for any of this, okay? I am learning on the fly. Of course, I couldn't tell anybody that because they didn't care. They're like, well, we paid our good money for you to know what you're doing, so figure it out. But I'm trying to figure it out while trying to remain competent at the same time. So I will come home frustrated, and sometimes I will cry because I'm like, this is just not working. I just need to do something else because this ain't working. So my husband, he would tell me, be patient with yourself. Everything takes time. You're not going to get it right away. You're not going to get it right away. That's going to be impossible. You have to make a lot of mistakes. And he will always tell me, an expert is a person who makes the most mistakes in the narrowest field. That's what he would always tell me. Because I would constantly tell him what mistakes I was making and, how I felt like I felt so embarrassed. I felt like a failure. But he's like, really? You're on your way to being an expert because you're making a lot of mistakes, which is good because how else are you going to learn? How else are you going to be successful unless you make mistakes? And he was saying, I wouldn't want, to be around someone who calls themselves an expert when they haven't made mistakes. I'm like, okay, that's true. That's true. That's true, husband. Okay, so nuggets like that really helped me along and just really planted a seed in my life. So, yes, he definitely had a lot more wisdom than somebody my age. I'm not saying that somebody my age would not have had this wisdom, but with my husband being older, the wisdom is just already there based off the experience that he had, the 18 years more experience than that he's had over me. Okay, now let's go into the cons. What are the cons of being married to an older man as a millennial? I couldn't, now my husband is, he's one of a kind. I couldn't really think of a lot of substantive cons. Like, he's not controlling. He's not demeaning. He respects my opinion. So he's not that kind of a husband or older man for me. But there are some differences, and it's generational differences, it's age difference that cause these cons that I'm going to tell you about right now. So, one, different tastes in music, movies, pop culture is different. So, like, for example, my husband, he was born in the early 70s. So, his music was like Prince and Journey and Casey and JoJo and I'm trying to think the rap groups and I can't think of it right now. Straight Outta Compton. I can't think of the rap group right now. Wow, I'm like super just out of it. And I see, you know, Ice Cube, Eazy-E. I can't think of the name of the group. Wow. But you know what I'm talking about. You know. So all of these 80s, 90s groups and singers and rappers that he talks about, what are the artists that I listen to? Shoot. Fetty Wap, Cardi B, B2K, that was early 2000s. Usher, Destiny's Child, of course Beyonce, duh. And so there's a difference. So when he turns on his 80s music, 90s music, and house, he loves house music. You know, I'll be looking at him like, okay, like I'm not interested. But you know what? I've actually learned to like some of this music that he's listening to, that he listened to and grew up on. So it's actually expanded my music palette. Same with movies and pop culture. You know, everything from the 80s and 90s. He's like, yes, these movies were bomb. This pop culture was bomb. Whereas me is completely different. So our tastes are a little bit different. Now, granted, he's open to my taste and I'm open to his. So it works. But the difference is clearly there. He'll say like, oh yeah, you know, don't you know this movie from like the 80s? I'm like, first of all, I was not even born. So that's number one. You know, second of all, no, I don't know this movie, sorry. So sometimes I see that he gets a little bit disappointed, but he'll get over it. Another con is that the taste in clothes is different. Okay. So, of course, with him being a man and me being a woman, of course, there's going to be a difference in clothes. But the men that I was around, they would wear like for example, let's talk about maybe like dress clothes. So, like my brother, for example, him being a millennial as well, he'll wear like a slim fit shirt, slim fit pants, and maybe, you know, a pair of loafers or something like that. That's just a style now. My husband, I bought him a slim fit shirt just once. He almost cussed me the heck out. He's like, what the heck is this? Why is it so tight? I'm like, babe, that's the style. He was like, no, don't ever do that to me ever again. Ever. Like, I'm not here for it. So he was not here for the style at all. The tight jeans, the tight shirts. He's like, no, I don't do any of that. I'm trying to get him to come around to it, but I don't think he's here for it. Another con is that health becomes a necessity. So my husband is at the age where He gets his colonoscopy done. He get certain tests done that usually men in their 40s get done. Whereas if I was with someone in their 20s, they wouldn't really have to worry about that right now, unless of course they had a family history. But with my husband being older, I want to make sure that he's in good health so that he can be around to enjoy our marriage and enjoy our children whenever we have any. So I'm constantly working towards making sure that he's going to the doctor regularly, that he's getting whatever tests he needs to get done, because I want him to be around. Now, granted, there are more people my age, it seems like, that are dying more than his age, and I could be wrong, but it seems like it. So there's a possibility that I could go before him. But with men's life expectancy being lower than women, I'm erring on the side of him going first because that's how it usually goes. But I'm constantly trying to make sure that he's in good health because I just want him to be around as long as possible, as long as God will allow him to be on this earth. So we going to that doctor. Like, I'm going with him in a couple of months to the doctor. Like, we ain't missing no appointments. We got to make sure that your health is on point. Now, with that being said, that leads me to the next con. Worrying about becoming a widow early. So when I first started dating my husband and my dad sat me down for a conversation about my whole life with dating an older man, it was actually him and my cousin. They were saying, like, you're dating this older man, there's a possibility that, your marriage may not, if you ever decide to get married to him, that your marriage may not last that long because he's substantially older and he could die, at a certain age, and you, being young, you could be a widow early. And I was like, wait a minute, really? This is a conversation that we're having? But once I got married, that kind of stuck with me. And it's something that I shouldn't worry about. It's something, I should be focused on enjoying my life, enjoying my marriage to him. But that's something that I concern myself with. So I'm constantly, and this kind of goes back to the previous kind of making health a necessity, I'm constantly trying to make sure that he's in good health, that he's exercising, that he's eating right, because I want him to do whatever he can within his power to prolong his life. Because, and I tell him too, I'm too young and cute to be a widow. Come on now. Like, 30 years old, a widow, that ain't hot. Now, I know it happens, but this is just a running joke that I tell him. Like, that ain't hot. We gonna have to figure out something to make sure that doesn't happen. But yeah, those are my pros and cons of being with an older man. Not only just an older man, but someone in a different generation. Are there any people out there who are involved with an older man? Let me know. Share your thoughts with me at mindofmillennials@gmail.com or on our Facebook page, The Millennial Mind. Before I let you guys go, I have a quote, and it's specifically for being with an older man. It says, an older guy, he's going to show you things that a young man can't show you. He's going to show you how to stay alive. He's going to show you how to turn corners where your young friends will show you how to turn right into that wall. You know what I'm saying? And that comes from Snoop Dogg. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And until next week, I will see you guys soon.